Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life. And whatever way you think we mean that when we say that is probably a way we mean that. Every week we get together to talk about one element of building a better life, the challenges involved, the excitement, different ways of looking at it. And we hope that it resonates with you and your own life. By we, I mean myself, JDK Wyneken, and of course, also my lovely co-host, colleague, co-collaborator, friend, fellow visionary, Ashley Knebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hi. I like how that list is getting longer every time.
Well,
Soon it's gonna be like the whole episode.
I know we're need to get you a name tag that has all of that listed on it. Makes
Name
it
tag.
easy for you to know. How are you?
I'm good. I came in with the giggles. I'm glad I got most of them out.
Ashley, don't you come in every week with the giggles?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I try and leave some in the show for everybody.
Well, I like it because it means you're excited to be here.
Yeah.
And, you're bringing really good energy in as you
thank
always
you.
do. Right. So anyway, so really happy that you're here, of course, Ashley, again, looking forward to today's show. We're really excited to have all of you listening, whether you are listening live on 11:10 a.m. KKNW in Seattle, or you are catching this as a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or you are actually watching us currently on our live stream on YouTube. And we're also on Instagram at our Staying Power Show site. So you can watch us there if you want to see what this looks like as we go about it and see all of Ashley's funny facial expressions when I'm talking. You can see it on the live stream. And of course, that's at our YouTube channel. Links to all of these are available in the show notes in all of those locations. So we hope that you reach out to us, and you can also find us at stayingpowershow@gmail.com. And we would love to chat with you. There's a lot to cover, Ashley, every time. I mean, that's talk about lists getting longer. All the different places that we are available is getting longer and longer.
To find a way to make it real snappy for you.
Yeah, well,
you do a great job, though.
Thank you. We're getting there.
Real good.
But as we both know, anything that can be truncated to make me talk less is probably good at the front end, right?
I'm always here to help.
Yes.
Except for I won't say it. It's all you.
Nah, it's all right. That's all right. So, okay. So we have a really interesting topic
we do.
for today. Yes. And but I think the best way for us to introduce the topic is probably via our weekly segment, right? Where we take 2 minutes. Ashley, each and I take 2 minutes to talk about something from the past week that has either been a triumph or a terror. And we choose a different one each week. And I think this week, Ashley, a 2 minutes of triumph might be a good way to kick this off and to talk about today's topic. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. So without further ado, here we go. 2 minutes of triumph. Yeah, I love that. Yes.
Yes, you do.
I do. All right, Ashley, as always, you are up first.
Oh, I get to go first. Okay. I was taking some inventory over life experiences as of the last few months. And because we've had so many up and coming things happening with our Staying Power show and our network, and they're all great and they're all growth and it's all really good. I just had a moment of gratitude for myself and appreciation that all of the school of hard knocks that I've gone through in my occupational and business sense that I've done over the last 6 months has actually really prepared me for what we're doing currently, but what we're going to be doing, the growth and the stuff that's coming up in the next 6 months or so, and opportunities that are coming for me specifically.
Yes.
I know there's no way I would be able to carry those out as professionally and eloquently that I know I'm going to be able to do if I hadn't gone through all the difficulties and the challenges and the stress and the frustration that if listeners have been tuning in the last few months or so, they've heard off and on about these. So I just had a moment of realization, like I would not be able to do any of those things. I don't even think those opportunities would have come about had I not gone through all that. So my triumph is just saying thanks life for sending me the lessons because I learned them all and I'm ready for my test.
That's good. That's
Careful what
good.
I ask for, but
Right.
here we
So
go.
has it been learning a lot about what you don't want to bring into these new opportunities?
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's part of
It's
it.
like I know what works and I know what doesn't work and I know what works well for me. And
Mhm.
I know as I'm building something, how I want to build it, what kind of materials do I want to use, and I mean metaphorically, of
Mhm.
course. But
Mhm.
it's really I feel like I'm doing this again, but with a lot more wisdom and experience. So
Got it. Got it. Well, it's pretty exciting what
yeah,
we're working towards, and we realize, listeners, we're teasing you a little bit
such
with
a
that,
tease.
but it's important for you to stay tuned with it because it is pretty exciting, what's happening, not just with everything that Ashley mentioned, but also just for her in all of this. There's some really cool stuff happening. So,
Thanks.
all right, that's a really good one. So for me, in some ways similar, I was challenged, as I mentioned on the show last week, right? Uh,
You were having a thing
I was
last
having
week.
some
Okay,
challenges with
you
a friend
were.
of mine last week, and in the repairing discussions that were going on in that, and go ahead and listen to last week's episode when you get a chance if you want to catch up on that. In the midst of that conversation, one of the things that she pointed out to me was her perspective that um, I don't always trust myself with how I am to do the things that I want to be doing, right? And so it wasn't a critique so much as a, this is what I see, and I think if you really trusted yourself, new things would happen,
Mhm.
right? New challenges or new opportunities would come out if you would do that. And I think, and she thought I'd feel more aligned, right, with that. We kind of speak that language. You and I talk
Sure.
about alignment. So she and I do too. So I leaned into that. And last week, I had some things when I started taking a look. Okay, what is it that I trust about myself?
Mhm.
You're going to laugh at this, right? My gifts include being able to talk like this in front of large groups of people, small groups of people,
Or just me.
or just you, to kind of get people thinking about things in a different way, to inspire, to take complicated subjects and break them down into something that's easier to digest, and to get people thinking in a new way that they feel safe doing it and they don't feel like I'm
Mm.
attacking things. So I spent some time on this. Now, how could I leverage that into what I'm doing, both with Staying Power Network? Well, without sharing any details, again, teaser, I leaned into that and some opportunities seem to be coming forward that are going to allow me to take some big steps in what I'm doing
Hmm.
on our side of things. And that feels good. And so I came out at the triumph is, oh, I think I know what she meant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it's still developing, but that was a real triumph.
I mean, I love that for you,
Thank
first of
you.
all, that's really great, and I completely concur with the things that she said
Mhm.
about you, because you certainly do have a really great ability of being able to take things and make them understandable and seemingly reachable for people.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I
that.
really like that, so that's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. It was really good. And all right, so that's my 2 minutes, your 2 minutes. The reason why this ties into today's topic though, I think I
Mhm.
need to kind of ping pong this back to you. It's because of something once again you posted on your social media the other day and your stories in the morning, and you
Mhm.
can find those links in the show notes. Ashley likes to post something almost every morning while
Yeah, it's
she's
fine.
drinking her coffee. And it's usually at for me an ungodly hour, but not for you. And
No.
and yet you posted something that I went, "Oh, this not only ties into what we just talked about, but it ties
Mhm.
into what I shared last week." And I thought it might be a good topic. So why don't you tell everybody what that
Okay.
was?
Oh, thank you. The ungodly hour of roughly 5, sometimes it's 5:30. I do give myself a little grace, but
I've seen
anyways,
it earlier than that.
uh, this is true. There has been some
Mhm.
times.
Mhm.
But I saw this thing and I posted a little my own 2 cents about it, but I think we can actually take that topic and look at it from a few different perspectives, but essentially, it was talking about how whether it is your personal health, whether it's a relationship or a friendship or a business connection you have, whether it's your laundry machine at home or whatever type of thing, that it is better to do maintenance than wait for repairs to have to happen.
Mm.
Whereas, so the idea is like you're on a semi-continual basis, doing the maintenance, you're checking in on it, you're putting a light amount of work into said thing to
Mhm.
make sure that it's running smoothly at the proper capacity and all is taken care of. And as long as you continue with that, maintenance in your car, even car runs great, right? As opposed to neglect and then just giving it the attention that it deserves because now something has gone wrong and now you have to do a bunch of repairs, which
Mhm.
could be timely, they could be costly, it could be a large investment in so many manners. However, I do think both are necessary,
Right.
maintenance and repairs.
Well, certainly by the time a repair rolls around, it's necessary. Otherwise, it's broken.
You're right, and
Right.
then you're starting afresh, but
So the equivalent would be if we're talking about a car, you maintain the car knowing what you need to do for it,
Mhm,
regular oil changes,
mhm.
tire rotations, wash it, all that kind of thing, rather than wait for the engine lights to come on.
Yeah, or
Or
even worse,
break
ignore
down,
those.
right, ignore those and then have it break down on the side of the road when
Yeah.
right, and then suddenly have a really costly
Yes.
repair, a
Yes.
difficult repair. Okay. And speaking of which, I mean, I just read the other day a statistic in the Atlantic that said almost half of Americans aren't sure where they could get $400 from to cover an emergency. Almost half.
You
Yeah,
serious?
right. Isn't that
Wow.
wild? Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of a deviation, but not quite.
I have thoughts on that.
Right. I do too. Right.
Okay.
But it does underscore what you're saying. Like in that case, it's,
Mhm.
it might be not so much like a lack of maintenance about finances. It could be
Mhm.
part of that. It could just also be the difficulty of life, a job,
Sure.
whatever.
Sure.
But nevertheless, that's sort of what you're saying, right? Is that both are necessary. And of course, your car is going to need repairs
Mhm.
at various points for
Sure.
whatever reason. Okay. Why did that stand out to you so much that you decided to put that into a post?
I really liked the concept of it, and I guess in the original sense, I was thinking more of, like, relationships or interpersonal connection, whether it's
Mhm.
romantic or friendship or whatnot, is that I think we tend to skip the maintenance,
Mm,
or we do maintenance, and it might look different depending on what the situation is, but it's it's done so few and far between or so thoughtlessly that it just becomes habit
ah,
instead of intentional,
mm,
and then most times things kind of crap out on you, and then all of a sudden you're, like, dumbfounded
right.
that this repair is necessary, and sometimes if you let things go and you don't address things or you don't give it proper attention, you would think that, "Oh, well, okay, I didn't give it attention, so the damage that's done shouldn't be that bad." But
Mhm.
your lack of attention might actually be causing a lot more damage than you think.
Right.
So when it comes time to now needing repair, it's a devastating
Oh, yeah.
necessity.
Yeah, because you were neglecting
Mhm.
the maintenance or
Mhm.
not giving yeah. Well, that certainly resonated for me when I read it, thinking about
Oh,
last week's topic, right?
yes.
And I think and I had a lot of people reach out last week. Thank you to those people who reached out last week to say like, "Wow, sounds like you had a hard week. Hope you're doing okay." I didn't get answers to everybody. I tried to, but yes, I'm doing okay.
So popular.
It was a tough week. However, one thing that I really value about that friendship is even when things are tough, when things like that come up, I always want to be learning from them. So I'm always willing to investigate that. And there's always growth that comes out of it. And as I shared in the 2 minutes of triumph, that happened this
Mhm.
week. I mean, I felt real growth, real shifts, and that's going to benefit me, and that's going to benefit my friendship with this person. Quick update on that. Um, I wouldn't say things are resolved, but the initial burst is done. Like there's no more damage going on. I think we're kind of at an ease point. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm not sure if we're in maintenance or repair mode. There must be repair coming at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's sure.
things aren't
I will not
worse.
speculate, that's your
That's fine. But
situation.
things are not worse, which
Okay.
is good.
Okay.
And in fact, I've been kind of in a spot where I've been assessing all of this. Like, what are my next steps? What do I want to be doing? How do I want to show up better? I mean, these are all repair questions that we're going to talk about here in
Mhm.
just a minute. But the interesting thing for me is when I think about this repair that will happen, I'm very confident that this repair will happen with this person. Then it's going to give me a better indication of what maintenance looks like from that point,
Yes. Oh, I love that.
right? Because I don't in retrospect, the challenges if I'm looking at did I neglect something in the maintenance
Hmm.
on my side? I don't think that was the case. I think where there might have been some neglect of maintenance is on some of the stuff I was working on internally. I
Mhm.
think there may have been a letdown there, and then when that came out,
Sure.
and kinda came out sideways and got projected at her, that's where the problem was. It
Right.
wasn't in the dynamic with her. I don't know if she would agree
Mhm.
with that. I don't know what her perspective would be on that,
Hmm.
But nevertheless, from my side, that's what I see. And so to me, the relationship between maintenance and repair in this case seemed pretty evident. So that's why I thought it was a good topic.
Oh, thanks.
Right.
I mean, that is a thing. When I say maintenance and repair, I'm not projecting it onto like, oh, it's somebody else or it's the relationship or whatever. It can most definitely be applicable to yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes both, again, are necessary. We do our daily maintenance on ourselves, take good care of yourself, hopefully get some exercise, feed yourself nutritional things,
Sleep.
Go get your hair done on occasion. Or, if you do some things like that really help yourself, maybe you get a facial and that you're like, this feels like maintenance. This is a good way to upkeep my emotional self-love for myself. But sometimes it may need like a full 180 repair. Like you did with your nutritional and athletic journey.
Oh, yes.
I would consider that a major repair
That was.
on yourself.
That was.
If you don't mind me using it.
No, that's a great example. It's a great example. Almost 50 pounds now. From that. And yes, because it was really, like you said, a 180-degree shift, right? And it was a major repair. I mean, if we're going to put it in car terms again, this was like the 150,000 mile top to bottom checkup.
You weren't broken, like you weren't in a car accident. However,
there were things that
things were worn out.
Yeah,
probably your clothes.
Things are worn out. Exactly. Well, and just things weren't running as well as they could. And so, rather than replacing parts, it's more of like, what can I do differently? And so that's a really good example. And so now what maintenance looks like for that standard is way different now. And I know a lot better how to not get to a point where I need another major repair like that again. Right. So there are advantages to that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this relationship, I think, is important because in the end, if we're talking about on a relational element, whether we're talking about romantic, friendship, family, if you can do maintenance better, yes, you're going to maybe have fewer times you have to repair. It will not change the fact, though, that there will be repairs.
Right.
Right. Because as we'll talk about, coming up here in a little bit after the break, we're going to talk about how this is a natural cycle of things, right? Just like with, you have machines break down, no matter how well you maintain them, you have to get them repaired sometimes, right? So we're talking about the relationship between the ideal versions of how to maintain something to minimize the amount of repair you need to do, and then what a really quality good repair looks like. And there's a lot in common to them, and they reinforce each other, which I think is really important. Good maintenance can lead to good repair, and good repair can then lead to improved maintenance moving beyond there. And I think that's really what we want to do in relationships. Okay.
Great.
All right. We have that established just in time for our first break. So when we come back from this break, Ashley and I will continue talking about this relationship between maintenance and repair, primarily between people and within ourselves. So we'll be back in just a second here on Staying Power.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
How's business?
Good. Are you up to speed with the new beneficial ownership reporting requirements?
Sort of. What's it about?
It's a new initiative to help fight crimes like money laundering, fraud, and drug trafficking. A lot of small businesses like ours just have to report some basic info to the federal government about the real people behind them.
Reporting your company's beneficial ownership information is quick, secure, and free, and it helps protect U.S. national security. Learn more at fincen.gov/BOI.
Get inspired every hour right here on Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are talking about maintenance and repair, not in the physical sense of cars or washing machines or anything like that, but within ourselves and within our relationships, all various kinds, which both, as Ashley accurately pointed out in the previous segment, both take intention, right? And work. And
Mhm.
there's good ways to do them and not so good ways to do them. So, Ashley, let's go ahead and jump on that. You're really liking this topic, you said during the break.
I am. I mean, it was my topic, but
I know.
I
So it just affirms the fact that you're feeling great.
no,
Um,
I think it's good because sometimes people view repairs as like a bad thing. Like,
Right.
"Ugh, now I gotta do this repair." And maybe sometimes it is if it's really detrimental because you let it go that long. But
if indeed
repairs
it was
don't
for neglect,
Yeah,
right?
right, but repairs don't have to be.
No, they don't, and they're not anything that we like because usually they're unexpected, and if we're talking about
It's
with
true.
financial things, it's an unexpected cost, right?
Mhm.
And that can be a challenge. But in the case of relationships and those dynamics, they are inevitable, and I think it's important at the top here to make clear that the way to gauge a successful relationship is not by whether there's a lack of repair, right, in it, or even what the maintenance looks like. Because even the healthiest of relationships are going to require maintenance
Mhm.
and are going to involve repair, right? I'm
Mhm.
going through that exactly right now in the one example that I talked about last week. Um, and it's going to lead to better things, right? I think for me, I think for her, and I think for that friendship. So I thought, Ashley, what we could do is we could talk about some specifics of what do we mean by maintenance and repair? What's the
Mm,
differences between them?
okay.
So we can all understand those things and kind of explore those a little. So where would you start with that? Let's start with maintenance.
Okay. Are you talking about maintenance between
Let's talk about it in terms of relationships and
relationships? Okay.
ourselves. Yeah.
I would say, if you're between like either with yourself or with a significant other or a friendship, really good first one would be to positively invest in it. And it could be as simple as writing a nice little note, a compliment, a hey, I saw you did this and I really appreciate it. Some gratitude. And like I said, you can say that to somebody else. Maybe your partner did something really great or they acknowledged you somehow and it meant a lot. You can give yourself that great affirmation of like what I did during my triumph. Like, hey, you got through all that and you learned some things and you did a really good job with it. Like,
Mm,
good for you, Or like you
mhm.
can also apply that to coworker, friend, such things. So I would say that's a good quick little maintenance that you can do. Doesn't cost anything.
No,
It's really
no.
easy. It's great to like you can write it in a text, you can leave it in a voice note, you can write it on a sticky note if people like getting notes, surprise
Mhm.
notes in a lunchbox.
Text, right?
Right. All those little
Super
things.
simple.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good practice. I mean, I think we all have moments of appreciation every day for something where we can take a step back from something and maybe a thought about a friend comes in and like, man, I really appreciated that. Even just taking that moment to reach out to them and say, that conversation we had the other day popped back into my head today.
Mhm.
And I just want you to know I really appreciated that. What you shared meant a lot,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
No one ever, I think, has ever said, getting those things out of the blue that someone appreciated something really bothers me, right? It's
No.
it can actually land at the perfect time for
Mhm.
somebody, depending on that. All right, so that kind of positivity, I think. One for me that I think of is the the word that comes to mind for it is openness. Like, how willing are you to, as part of maintenance, share what you're thinking, share what you're feeling with somebody? When somebody asks, and this is kind of a check for me when somebody asks me, "Oh, how are you doing?" Do I answer honestly, or do I'm like, "Oh, I'm good," right? Or, "Oh, I'm all right,"
Mm.
right? I try to actually give the answer that is true. "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm tired today," even if it's just to start there. Or, I feel like I'm grinding today," and then
Mhm.
being open with why. I think
Mhm.
that kind of openness so that people don't have to always be guessing. I think it also, over time, openness with another person, they get to start to understand what they're looking at, and they might actually be able to anticipate something. I know it's happened in a lot of cases. It's happened with you and me before
Mhm.
because we can be open about our conversations. You sometimes pick up on something in me that I'm not seeing yet, and you'll say, "How are you doing? You seem, A, B, or C. Is that true?" And then I go, "Oh, yeah, it
Mhm.
is." And suddenly we're having a connected conversation about something matters. I think that kind of openness to
Mhm.
not only share those things, but to also then to be open to hearing them, receiving them. If you're the person that's hearing them, I think is also an act of maintenance. I think
Hmm.
that's another one.
I would add to that, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
It's little unique, and I had a situation recently where, I know no one can picture this, but occasionally I get kind of grumpy and snappy.
Oh,
I have a little
some
fiery
of us can
temper.
picture it. Some
Anyways.
of us can.
Well, you've had the joy and pleasure of
I
experiencing
have
it
seen
once
it.
in a while.
I
But
have seen
anyways,
it.
I had a situation recently where somebody I was close to, I think I had a little bit of an attitude, and it wasn't necessarily directed at them, but I expelled some of it on them and kind
Mm.
of I retorted in a response in a way that it wasn't proper. And I was so proud of them. Normally they would just not say anything and just kind of brush it off and just take the hit and be like, "Ugh, okay,
Mhm.
whatever." And they actually came back to me and they're like, "Hey, I know that you're feeling something, you're going through something, but what you directed at me, I don't appreciate that
Mm.
because it was not I have nothing to do with what you're going through." Now, this was handled with care, but I was like, "You know what? That's so great. I'm so glad you said something because one, it's holding me accountable to make
True.
sure that my emotions are directed in the proper place and I'm not just bleeding them on people that I didn't cut." But I was like, "Wow, that actually in the moment for the betterment of everybody, it landed really well with me." And I'm like,
Mm.
"This is great." I was so thankful that they actually were that open, and it
Yeah.
was good practice for them to be that open, and it was really great practice for me to remember, like, okay, you can't abuse the fact that some of the people that will just brush this off.
Right.
It's not fair.
Right.
So, that was a great maintenance moment, and I was really thankful
That's
for
a
it.
great additional piece because by openness, we're also talking about difficult conversations,
Yeah,
difficult things
it
to
was
share,
good.
to
Yep.
be open. Yeah.
I don't
Um,
know if that counts as mine, but it was a piggyback.
no, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. What else?
I would say maintenance of we kinda said this earlier, but, like, checking in on people, but you have a good experience of this, of checking in on people long distance from you,
Oh, yeah.
in
Mhm.
your social networks, sending an email, maybe sending a surprise gift. I love doing this, and I wish people would do this more often because it has such a good impression. When you are out and about and you just happen to stumble across an item that you're like, "I know somebody would love this, and I know the person that would love this." Like,
Mhm.
the person comes to mind, you're like, "This was meant for them." It is totally okay to buy said item and give it to them. You don't have to wait for the holidays, you don't have to wait for their birthday,
Like that.
you don't have to wait. That moment
Mhm.
is good enough to give it to them, and I think it really speaks volumes of,
Mhm.
"I saw this and I thought of you."
Yeah.
Great maintenance.
Oh, absolutely it is. Because that's a form of affirmation. It's a form of assurance
Mhm,
that you're still thinking that this is worth investing in, and you're thinking of them independently of what's going on in our day. I mean, we are our number one sources of attention, right? What's going
mhm,
on with ourselves,
mhm,
and certainly maintenance of ourselves. We've talked about a lot, right, on this show, right? And you mentioned at the top of the show, healthy habits, healthy choices, right? That's the kind of thing. But when it comes to stepping out for other people, we all know we're all busy. We all have our things that we're doing. We all have our concerns. We all have our dreams. We all have our distractions. We all have those. And then suddenly out of that, somebody gives an assurance like that or gives a thought like that. Those are really powerful things in
mhm.
maintaining things. I have a buddy of mine who lives in the Midwest, Robert. And one of the things that he still does is he still writes handwritten letters. Uh
Really?
huh.
Oh, cool.
And every once in a while, you get one. And this handwritten letter where you're like, whoa, sat down and wrote this,
Mhm,
right? And wrote it out. It took that time to do it. And it might have been over a few days or whatever the case may be. But there's something about those letters that really always
mhm,
resonates with me. And it's something that I try to do that with cards, right?
mhm.
Letters, I think it'd be a good thing to adopt at some point. It is kind of a lost art, right? Writing letters these days.
Oh, sure. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always that joke of, like, people, "Oh, I don't have time to text you back." It's like, well, back in the day, they wrote, like, letters to each other. They
Hmm.
found time.
And waited days, right? Or
Mhm.
longer to get answers. And so you
Mhm.
had to talk about maintaining something with a lot of faith in between. You don't get the immediate gratification or the immediate responses, right?
Mhm.
And instead our expectations for response time, if we reach out to somebody with something and they don't respond back in a certain amount of time, we assume like either bad intentions or something's gone wrong or
Mhm.
something catastrophic has befallen them, like they're
Right.
trapped under something heavy or
Yeah.
something
You can
like
come
that.
up with weird stories.
Yeah, right, right. Okay, so that kind of thing, kind of keeping the networks together. I think also, and I wonder what you think of this, uh, because for some people, I think this sounds a little strange, but I do think it matters. How in relationships, being open and about the specified state or condition, like how are we doing? You know, as your
Mhm.
friend or as your partner, as your family member, what else, could I be doing? Right. Or what else could we be doing? How are we doing? Right. And it doesn't, I know, I mean, people don't like State of the Union kind of conversations necessarily because they always feel so big. Right.
Right.
And, what's the dreaded thing? We need to talk. Right. You hear that from somebody. It's like, ugh. But I'm wondering about that. What do you think of that? Because I do think sometimes acknowledging that this relationship, whatever kind that it is, matters to me. And I want to know how well I'm doing in it for you. And because it matters to me to continue to maintain it well and to
Mhm.
grow it well, because that's the thing that we're sort of alluding to here. It's not like you're maintaining a status quo in a relationship. You're maintaining it so it can grow well, like in a garden. You're pulling the
Mhm.
weeds out. You're making sure it's watered well, pruning things back,
Mhm.
right? And you have to do that on a daily basis. Otherwise, everything gets out of kilter. But that's how the plants grow.
Mhm.
So you're maintaining it so it can grow in a way that is satisfactory and beneficial to everybody. So what about that? To me, that's kind of a thing about
Oh,
maintenance is
sure.
checking
Yeah.
in.
Those, whether you do it like weekly, monthly, I do know people that have those kind of conversations where they check in with their partner and they're like, on whatever topics
On
they
the
have
regular, you mean?
decided, yes, on a consistent basis, which
Mm,
I think maybe in the short run, it might be a little bit uncomfortable for people who have never done it before, or they feel like there's going to be like this scrutinized pressure. You set the parameters of what it wants to look like, I mean, and you guys come to an agreement on it, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. And I think the more practice that is done with that, the more people who in the beginning were not comfortable or didn't know what to say will actually start to realize it can be beneficial and more comfortable because they're given an opportunity to share something in an environment and in a space where it was decided that this is okay to share. And
mhm,
I appreciate and would love to encourage an answer out of you.
mhm,
People will start to actually appreciate those moments quite a bit. I think it's really smart because in our lives, you have, especially in a relationship, you have two people who are their own individual. They're going through their own experiences, their own you might be together, but you or you and I am I, we're still going through our own unique circumstances in the same
and
environment.
we view each other
On the
in
yes,
different ways, right, from
yes.
the other. Uh-huh,
And I'm
right.
viewing you from my perspective and not you from your perspective, so it
Mhm,
looks different.
mhm,
And, maintenance, depending on, like, if I'm going through a rainy season and you're going through a summer season, the maintenance in the relationship is gonna look different from what you're doing versus what I'm doing.
mhm,
I might be going through a rough time. You might be like, "Hey, I'm gonna do a little more maintenance because life is Hakuna Matata for me right now, and you need
right.
some extra support."
Mhm,
It will look different, and that is the great thing about checking in is then you can see where do you need the extra support, where do you need a little extra time, and if you both come to it with, "How can I help? How can I help you grow and love on you and appreciate you?" If you have 2 people doing that together, like, everything good is gonna come out of that.
yeah, yeah, because, even if you're making some adjustments and alterations to how you do things,
Mhm,
the very act of doing that and showing the faith in one another to both share that and then act on it,
mhm.
right, can do a lot. It's what some people have called, like, putting money in the bank,
Yeah,
right?
deposits.
Putting some of those deposits in there, right? I think that's John Gottman, actually.
Mhm.
That you put that money in those accounts, right? And that's one of the things that I think is big, like, to recognize that someone in your life is going through a shift of some sort and you want to support them in that. Some alterations may have to happen that could
Mhm.
mean things like a little bit less time for the two of you
Yep.
at various points. But
Mhm.
to make that adjustment and for the person to see this person cares enough for me that they're going to roll with that, that
Yeah,
means a lot.
yeah. And I mean, it could be, like, really big things, like, "Okay, I need you to cook dinner for the family these 2 nights of the week because these 2 days are so heavily loaded for
Right.
me. By the time I get home, I'm just totally spent." Or something as small as, like, "Can you just take the garbage out because that's a stressor, but you wouldn't believe how much better I feel when that's taken out. So if
Mhm.
you can do that little task, great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, or however it ends up looking, or, like maybe somebody's like, "Hey, I'm gonna just be the car person. I'm gonna make sure that the cars always have gas, that they're maintenance, that they're washed. I'll take on that particular chore. You never have to worry about the state of your car because I got it covered."
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, all those things kind of reminds me of the conversation we had about love languages not
Mhm.
too long ago. Like, what are those? To be in tune with people, no matter what kind of relationship it is, to what that is, right? For the people where words of affirmation are really strong, right?
Yeah.
Or kind of letting people know what's happening with you so they know if you're not going to be as available as you normally are, right? Those types of things. I'm one of those people who's like, I love to have information. Like if somebody's telling me, if somebody's telling me, yeah, I've got this going on and, it might take me a little while to get back to you. I like knowing that, right? I like knowing that. And at the same time, I like anyone who is going to maintain something with me by really kind of checking in, going, I didn't like how that went, or I'm sorry that, I feel like I need to apologize to you. Even if I'm like, huh, what are you talking about? And then I can say, well, I appreciate you care that much, right? That kind of maintenance, I think, goes a long way. So, okay. So we're talking about with those things as we lead up to our second break here. We're talking about these are things that require, or if you really want to do them well, an awareness and intention on the
Mhm.
daily
Mhm.
to this, right? Okay. I don't think anything in there sounded too crazy
No.
or too difficult, but
Maintenance is not supposed to be
it's not supposed to be. Right. Right.
maintenance.
Now, if some of that sounds daunting or sounds unfamiliar to any of you listening, it's probably worth noting that, right? And perhaps spending a little bit of time on that. And certainly you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to talk to you about it. What we'll talk about coming back after our second break is repair, right?
Mhm.
Second part of this. What does that look like? And then hopefully I have a little bit of time to talk about how they can reinforce each other over time. So come on back here on Staying Power in just a minute, and we'll finish up the show talking about repair and why you shouldn't be scared of it.
Have you ever wanted to go above and beyond for your community? Volunteering for your local fire or EMS department is your opportunity. Join a family that will serve with you, always have your back, and train you to be the best version of yourself. As a volunteer, you will meet new people, learn new skills, and make a meaningful impact. Learn more at makemeafirefighter.org. That's makemeafirefighter.org.
Hello, this is Marilyn Milano, host of Love Has Many Faces on Alternative Talk 1150 KKNW, and we are all about helping animals and their people. To that end, we talk to rescue groups, medical and behavioral experts, businesses with products or services that help pet, and others who are making a difference. Tune into Alternative Talk 1150 every Tuesday from 9 to 9:30 in the morning Pacific Time, and now you can listen to Love Has Many Faces wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Just look for Love Has Many Faces and join us there.
Going our own way every day. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are kind of coming down the back stretch of today's episode, talking about maintenance versus repair, actually the relationship between them. And we're really focusing on it within relationships, right? Because so much of building a better life is building better relationships. We are wired for connection with ourselves and with others. And we're talking about, in this case, inevitabilities, right? Maintenance is required in our relationships for them to grow. Repair is going to be required in our relationships for them to grow because we are people, right? And again, even the healthiest people are going to need to repair their relationships from time to time. Something that I'm reminding myself of late with that. So actually, we talked about maintenance. Let's talk a little bit about repair. And I think a good way to differentiate it for listeners is maintenance. Well, everything we talked about before the first break are about ongoing things, ongoing actions, right? To maintain things, to allow them to grow, the regular weeding and watering and all that. What we're talking about, though, with repair are specific actions taken to repair something when something has stopped working, when the maintenance, for whatever reason, in whatever way, has stopped working, and there's been a rupture, right? As psychologists tend to call it today. There's a rupture
Sure.
that's in need of repair. So let's talk a little bit about those. So these are more specific with that. Okay. So with that, what do you see? What
I
comes
mean,
up?
the obvious kind of first one is figuring out what went wrong. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but it is
Mhm.
still something that's the first step. Something went wrong.
What just happened here?
Yes.
Mhm.
And what was your experience of it? What was my experience of it? What did you see? What did I see?
Mhm.
Why was it a issue for you that now requires repair? And same for me. Is it
Mhm.
something I need to take responsibility for? Is it something that you need to take responsibility for? And this is the uncomfortable stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Repairs. Sometimes I think repairs can be not uncomfortable,
Mhm.
in some motions of like maybe your relationship has been really rocky for a while. So the two of you booked an exclusive like weekend getaway somewhere. I would call that repair. Now, it
Ah,
may not be totally comfortable the whole time because you guys
right.
might hash out things on that weekend, but it could also be semi comfortable and good. That
Mhm.
can be a repair. But in this instance of like having the difficult conversation of what happened, one is vital to start the repair because
Yes.
you're getting to ground zero. You're getting down to the root of what happened.
Yeah.
And then you know what to do
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. And the difficult part can be in there from my own experience. And I'm thinking about last week, but also other things. Is part of that involves some of the things we've already talked about, a willingness to be open about mistakes,
Mhm.
the feelings of them, particularly if it's clear that one side made a mistake and the other is expressing how they felt about it, like it was in my case. In my case of what I was talking about last week, it was my mistake, right? I'm the one who kind of put something out there that didn't go well. And so that involves, being vulnerable about ownership, accountability, feelings, and then also difficult, at least sometimes for me, is I want to, if I'm at fault, I want to fix it. But one has to allow the space for someone to share what it was like
Mhm.
and to work that out. And to not assume that just because I might be able to say, this is what was happening, right? And I know what was happening, that means the conversation's over, right? The other person's going to have a lot of thoughts and feelings and questions about that because, like you pointed out, they're experiencing me from their perspective, not from mine.
Mhm.
That can get challenging because, we want discomfort to end, right? And we
Right.
want the repair to happen quickly because this relationship matters to us. So we want to fix it quickly.
Mhm.
And it doesn't work that way necessarily.
Right, because sometimes and usually the 2 different people will find themselves in a relationship or a friendship where one is like the instant fixer. Like, "I
Mhm.
wanna address it," and maybe it's because it's uncomfortable, so they just wanna fix it and move on so
Right.
it's now comfortable again,
Right.
or they just have that innate desire to, like, "This is a problem, I want to address it right now. I wanna make it better for you and for me." And then you have the other people who are like, "I need to sit and brew on this for a while.
Mhm.
When I feel ready, we can talk about it. We can discuss things moving forward." But I have found commonly that those 2 end up meeting and they're
They
partnered
can.
and they're friends and
Uh-huh.
everything, and it takes growth for both
It does.
because one person needs to learn how to respect the boundaries of another
Mhm.
and
And the process.
the process
Yeah.
and learn to sit with that discomfort in themselves and give the respect and opportunity for the other person
Mhm.
to work through whatever it is that they need to work through. At the same time, you also, I feel, should give a little bit of accommodation to the other person and maybe not wait a whole week to talk to someone,
Not stonewall.
Yeah,
Right.
don't stonewall them,
Right.
don't isolate them, don't
Right.
be in a broody mood for extended periods of time.
Particularly without communication.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
If you're honest about I'm struggling with this, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm having difficult pulling myself out of this mood. That kind of thing. Yeah. And boy, if we're talking about attachment styles getting involved in this, right? What you're talking about is people like myself, I tend to, when there's conflict, I'm more of an anxious. I want to lean in and fix it. I want to
Mhm.
solve it. I want to
Mhm.
address it. I want to grow. Part of that is from, I think, a healthy willingness to engage because I care. Another part of it, I don't think is necessarily coming from the healthiest place. And that is, I don't want to feel unsettled anymore. I have that side of me that wants that discomfort gone quickly.
Mhm.
In the case of my friend I'm talking about, she's more of the avoidant side. When something like that happens, her tendency is to withdraw. Right. And so when you have an anxious person wanting to fix it and an avoidant
Chasing
person
after.
wanting to withdraw, you suddenly are all tilting. I'm leaning forward. She's leaning backward. You're not connecting. Now, I know that about myself. She knows that about herself. So one of the real positives of last week was both of us recognized that, still leaned in. I was able to hold that time for space, and I still am, because I know that's how this works. And she leaned in earlier than she ever has before, right, to work on it. And that was a recognition of, like, I think what you're talking about.
Nice.
Recognizing the other person, what they need. So you kind of lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real positive by itself. So, okay. So, oh yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in that one. Okay, so understanding what went wrong, obviously addressing whatever the direct conflict is, right? Whatever the feeling is. Then there's the other one. How does one learn how to communicate constructively? Because this is so important, right? How you communicate these things matters. So for you, what does that constructive communication look like in a situation like this, a repair? Or how have you experienced it?
Sure. I will say I feel like I am growing and getting better at this as I am growing and maturing my understanding of the world and people and how they function. That also has grown my vocabulary. So I feel like I have a better way of expressing things and making it very understandable and wrapping it up in a way to present it that is not so direct and painful. I used to be just very blunt, and that's not a bad thing per se.
Right.
It doesn't always land well. So there are times where you can preface things and say, I don't know how else to word this, and I say this with grace and kindness, but this is going to come out a little bit raw and abrupt or something. You can say that. And prefacing with that, I have found in saying it and hearing it does make a difference.
It does.
Because it's telling me the intention of the voice that it's coming from does not mean ill will, does not mean harm. They're not saying something to rile me up, to hurt me. It's not name calling. It's not intentionally trying to damage me.
Yeah.
They just don't know how else to communicate this. That alone, I think, makes a huge difference.
It does. And that, in order for that to happen, it has to come from a place of self-awareness for that person, that that's what's happening, that they know they can come across that way, or that they're feeling that way. They're feeling raw. They're feeling aggressive. They're feeling whatever it might be. And at the same time, acknowledging that they don't want that to be the thing that blasts this other person.
Yeah.
So that takes that self-awareness of how one feels, and the willingness, again, to be open in the moment to that. One of the things I found in times of repair with friendships and relationships, all joking aside about how I like to talk, I oftentimes in those moments don't really know what to say. Like, I find myself wanting to find the right words all the time, but I don't know what they are.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes because if I'm in a spot where I'm feeling that anxiousness, I'm not necessarily thinking clearly. But I've found that if I can say that and say, look, I'm not thinking really clearly here because I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling anxiety. I'm upset about this. I'm angry at myself. So I'm not sure how this is going to come out. I feel like I'm thinking out loud here. So I'm just trying to figure this out. So please don't, and I've said this before, please don't hold everything I say to be exactly what I mean, because I'm still figuring it out. That goes a long way, right? But in order to do that, I have to be able to be aware that that's the spot I'm in. Rather than, because I have a tendency to want to find the right word, the right time. Because in other areas of my life, I can, when I'm not right in the middle of a repair that's making me, making me anxious.
Sure.
So, okay.
Sure.
So there's that. What else?
I would say taking the responsibility of making amends. And this one's a heavy one, and this one can be difficult.
Which
This
is more
one
than
can-
just saying I'm sorry, isn't it?
Yes, because in my opinion, sorry doesn't mean anything until you put some actions to it.
What kind of actions?
Well, that depends on the situation.
Sure.
Maybe it's you're doing something repeatedly that is very hurtful to somebody. So I'm sorry, I will refrain from doing said actions again. Or maybe it's lack of action. You've not done these things. So now stepping up and doing it,
Right.
Whatever you're addressing as the issue, something has to change so that issue doesn't keep happening.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's kind of common sense. But, depending, you might be doing something that to you is like nothing. And to me,
Mhm.
it just really grates on a sensitive
Mhm.
part of my heart or something. And I'm like, this is just so painful. And for you, you're like, this is tiddlywinks. Why does this bother you?
Tiddlywinks.
Yes. Like this is nothing. This is just minor. I don't Isn't tiddlywinks a game?
It is a game from like the 50s,
Yes. Oh.
which is amazing.
Wow.
Anyway,
Anyways.
right. Something simple, right.
Something simple, but for me, it's like a big, big deal. Or it could be, it's like what I need to change and fix and correct is going to be really difficult for me.
Mhm.
It can be.
Yeah.
I understand we say these kind of casually, but I do understand when it comes to repairs, there can be some really deep, heavy stuff
Yeah.
that people are working through, and taking on the responsibility of the actions that caused the problem that now there needs to be a repair,
Mhm.
and working in the future to do the repair and those consistent actions of completing the repair so then you can transition back into maintenance
Yeah.
can be very, very difficult.
Yes, it can, and it requires a certain level to add on to that. I guess what we could call corrective maintenance,
Mhm.
because a person can make an amends on something and say, "I'm going to work on not doing that," or "I'm going to work on doing that." There has to be room on some level for corrective maintenance for when the person is doing it well and when they might need a reminder that it didn't happen. Rather than it
Mhm.
being another break and another
Yes.
rupture,
Yeah.
setting the standard and the plan for that corrective maintenance. So
Mhm.
rather, if it comes up again, "Hey, we talked about this," giving that person that, "Hey, we talked about this, you're doing it again," or whatever. Then the person going, "Yep, you're right."
Mhm.
That's that
Mhm.
corrective maintenance, I think, around that. I see the equivalent of like you're putting a cast on the broken bone, right? And you're stabilizing that, and there's gonna be some of those pains, right, as things heal
Sure.
a little bit. That corrective maintenance, I think, matters a lot, particularly around amends, because amends are about, yes, apologizing for the effect, but then doing something different. And that, of course, requires seeing the other person,
Mhm.
right? And not doing it from a place of, "Oh, I gotta keep them happy," or "I don't wanna do this,
Right.
but I'm gonna do it anyway,"
Right.
right? You have to be able to find that genuine spot where that's something that you want to do, right? Okay. We're getting short on time here, but
Sure.
one more thing I think that I'd like to share that I think is really important, um, is really being clear about how to get back on track. Once these things have all been talked about, how do we get back on track? It's not going back to how things were before.
Mhm.
It's not predicting where your things are going to be the next time around. How do we get back on track? What does that seem like? Like where I'm at in my situation that I talked about, I'm not sure how to get back on track yet. I haven't had that conversation. But
Mhm.
now talking about this, I know exactly where I'm going to start.
It sounds like an agreement.
It does. How do we get back on track? An agreement, going back to our episodes about
Yeah.
agreements that were so popular for listeners a month
Mhm.
or two ago. Those are available too if you want to go listen to those. Yeah. How do we get back on track? What are the agreements? What are the adjustments that need to be made?
Mhm.
How does that need to go? That can take a little bit of time. And I would encourage everybody to remind themselves that the more important the relationship, the more time it might take to get things back on track to a place that both are feeling comfortable again,
That's right.
right? It's
Mhm.
because they're closer doesn't mean it's going to be a faster fix. It could mean the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So, we could have gone on about this for a lot longer than this, and certainly
Mhm.
I'll probably do another episode about this at some point in time. But
Okay.
what a great topic. What a great
Thank you.
framework for that. So thanks, Ashley, for putting that out.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening or watching this episode of Staying Power. Remember, you can get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find it at 11:50 a.m. KKNW. You can also find it at our YouTube channel, on Instagram. There's lots of places to find us. And yes, if you're watching the stream, you can see Ashley saying I'm talking too much. But I do have to stop because our engineer is now saying the same thing. So I will see you next week, as will Ashley. And until then, I am JD.
And I'm Ashley.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.